Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. This is the first of quite a few Mondays in a row in which we are going to be recording a Hoops HD report. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by, I think David Griggs is asleep over there. Wake up, David. John Titel with David Griggs up here on the top row. Down below me, we got David Dorman back, as well as Joby Fortson. We've got a lot to get to tonight, but this is our Hoops HD report where we talk primarily about everything that's going on among the major conferences. We may talk about other teams, especially this time of year when the power conference teams are playing the smaller, the under the radar schools. But there were a lot of games. We are on recording this at the evening of Monday, November 15th. So we are in the process of just finishing up the 7th day of the season. So it should be the day of rest. No, is that?
There is no rest.
Okay, there is no rest.
Actually, the day after Christmas, I don't think there's a single game, which is
odd. All right, so we'll have a day off. Yeah. We got one day off between now and Selection Sunday.
It's Boxing Day. It's Boxing Day. All the stations have it on English Premier League.
Right.
That'll be all glued to his chair.
Whatever that stuff is. I'm going to go ahead right away. Start this off here by just pulling up, if I can do this correctly, the screen share. In which we should be having our scores popping up on the screen. If I did it right, if I did it wrong, then who knows what's showing up on the screen. And I seem to be having a little bit of trouble getting
You got the West Coast Conference up on the screen.
I had the West Coast Conference up on the screen. We seem to have lost it. Shall we try that again, everybody? Or should David, you want to fill in for a second while I get that working again?
Well, the West Coast Conference was up on the screen. I go through the program of putting this entire workbook together, and you can't even get it on the screen. Well, I don't put any of it, but I supervise it. I make sure that it's done correctly.
Now I think we should have it back. Okay, I figure why not? Let's start at the top. And what I mean by start at the top is the very top. The number one team of the nation is the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Titel, let me start with you here. They had, well, everyone was circling as looked like a real good, exciting game coming up at home against a real good Texas team. And about 5 minutes in, I think the game was over.
It was. I thought Texas was just going to be struggling in football this season, but apparently it is extending to the basketball court as well. Granted, it's mid-November, so I'm not ready to push the panic button, but certainly looking like they're missing Shaka Smart and his front court from last year, both of whom are long gone.
Yeah, and Dorman, let me bring you in. How impressed were you by the Zags?
Extremely. Timmy played unbelievable. Although he celebrates every possession like it's his last, but Gonzaga was just rolling. I mean, I've never seen a guy every time down the court, he's jumping up and down and signaling this and that, but Gonzaga's loaded. They looked really good.
And I'll tell you what, Joby, not only the Zags, but we had some fairly nice wins by the rest of this conference, including BYU, a real nice win over San Diego State.
San Diego State, that's huge because San Diego State has developed into a consistent program. You know what you're going to get. They are going to compete for the Mountain West. Even after this, they're going to compete for the Mountain West regular season title. This is a huge win, and exactly as you say, for the conference, because now BYU legitimately has an out-of-conference win that will not only help BYU's resume at the end of the year when all of a sudden a team with, very minimal losses at the end of the year. I mean, San Diego State will probably wind up with 5, at the end of the year. And on the verge of ranking, if not ranked, due to their lofty record from the Mountain West. That'll do is anyone who beats BYU, let's say San Francisco is sitting there at the top, or Santa Clara, or someone, they get at St. Mary's, they get a win against BYU in Provo, especially. They're able to peel one off, and BYU continues to play strong. That all of a sudden is a quality win for them that may have not been there had BYU not done this. Now, and look at the schedule from this past week on the right side. There's only 5 Reds. This is the West Coast Conference. This is the team that a conference like the Pac-12 should be coming in and regularly whipping and regularly beating. But then you look down at Stanford, Santa Clara. There are a lot of examples that, Davidson should beat San Francisco in a neutral year, an A-10 school versus West Coast. Didn't happen. West Coast Conference, hats off. And I think clearly has 2 at-large candidates and is laying the foundation for a third to rise up.
You know what? I should have done this before we went. Let me quickly pause and do this for those of you that are new to the show this year. Real quickly, what you're looking at here on the screen. I'll give you 3 seconds to just kind of go over this. We've got the conference. Obviously, we've got the teams. We've got the records
thank
here.
you for verifying that those are the teams.
But let me point out, we've got a lot of metrics, a lot of numbers here on the screen. First of all, the net and the KPI columns, those metrics are not available until we get further on in the season. So those are just one for everybody. But the resume metrics here, the other 2 are the ESPN SOR, or strength of record metric, and Joby, your JNG metric, which as of today has gone live and it will be updated almost every day for the rest of the season. You can find that right up top there. The predictive metrics are also metrics that the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee uses. The POM column is the Ken Pom rating. The BPI is the ESPN rating. The SAG column, that's the SAGRUN rating. We've got some of Ken Pom's additional ratings here, like teams' offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, and tempo, how fast you play. Last 2 columns are your AP and your coaches poll. The coaches poll, AP poll is effective as of today. The coaches poll does not release a new poll after the first week of the season. So that is still the preseason numbers for tonight. Last comment quickly, the OAR number here, that is an average of all of the other metrics combined. So it's kind of like take all the metrics on this page, average them out. It's a number, we kind of invented ourselves here, but it's the OAR. Yeah. But David, I'm sorry, I cut you off. I just want to throw that out there.
Well, you better be sorry, Chad. But yeah, the overall average ranking is all that. And I just wanted to, but getting back to some of the other teams in the conference, like Gonzaga isn't just number 1. I think they're pretty much the unanimous number 1. I mean, definitely the consensus number 1. But San Francisco getting a decent win. I like their team this year and beating a fairly decent Davidson team. But you mentioned San Diego leads Cal right now, and if they win that game, I think that makes the West Coast Conference 4-0 against the Pac-12. And Santa Clara, I know Stanford's down this year, but they just went in there and rocked them.
And that win at Nevada, if San Diego pulls off a second win, a road win at Nevada.
Yeah.
I'll say Nevada is going to compete for the Mountain West this year. Bill Musselman's long gone. But this is a very good win, developing out of conference. Once again, that sort of team that develops a baseline that rises all boats for the conference. Who knows if San Diego, Santa Clara, et cetera, is that third team, but I think there is room for a third team.
Yeah, and what it's doing is that it's building up the overall metrics for the conference, because not only are they – it's not like they're just staying at home and eating at the pastry cart and racking up bye-game wins. They're going out and beating not tournament teams. I mean, let's not get carried away, but teams that are better than what most, power conference teams are beating right now.
Yeah, when we get to the ACC, the West Coast Conference record will look beautiful in comparison.
Let's keep moving. Real quickly, I did pull up the upcoming schedule here on the right hand side. I scrolled down a little bit to point out a few games. First of all, BYU is playing Oregon coming up Tuesday night. Also keep an eye on the Loyola Marymount if they have anything this year. They've got a game against Florida State, and then the winner of Missouri SMU and Nevada coming up, and St. Mary's Notre Dame next Monday as well. Dorman, did you have a comment?
David just touched on the conference rankings and what it's going to do for the strength of their metrics. If BYU can take down Oregon tomorrow night, again, that will be a huge help for that conference and bring everyone up with it. So that is a huge game for not only BYU, but the entire conference, because I look for Oregon to have a big year and rack up a lot of wins in that Pac-12.
I tell you, if we're talking a little Pac-12, why don't we just stay out west and jump right over to the Pac-12 next? And Title, let me bring you back in here, because I know you want to talk about what happened in you being an Arizona guy, your arch rival school. If it happened on, I believe it was opening night there. No, sorry, it was Thursday night against UC Riverside.
I hope we have the video queued up, because I can talk for 5 minutes while you get it queued. No, this was a great win for any ASU haters like myself. Devils were up 5 with 9 minutes left, and Riverside came back and eventually made a miraculous 65-footer at the buzzer that swished to win it by JP Mormon II. And I couldn't be happier as a Wildcat fan.
Yeah, but aside from Arizona State, who actually, as we record this right now, is in a real tough battle at home against North Florida. So things are not looking good for Bobby Hurley's team so far this season. But Dorman, let me ask you about the big UCLA Villanova game. That was the other big game, and this game did not disappoint the way that the Texas Gonzaga game did, I don't think.
Didn't disappoint at all. Those teams were in a heavy bout fight going back and forth. Villanova had control most of the second half, and UCLA kept firing back, and Johnny Juzang was absolutely awesome. That mid-range jump shot, and everyone's shooting threes and bombs these days, but his long-range two-game was absolutely phenomenal. UCLA is for real. They deserve all these top-notch rankings in the country, anywhere from 1 to 3. But Villanova is very good, and Villanova will get better as the year goes on under Jay Wright. And I'm not knocking Villanova much for this loss. And Pauley Pavilion was buzzing. The place was rocking.
Yeah, what a great early season game.
UCLA's interior really impressed me, and they needed it early because they couldn't hit open three. There were a lot. Vasquez, Johnny Juzang had some open threes in the first 10 minutes that just were not hitting. But the inside, they kept pounding inside and getting those key baskets and preventing, for the most part, early on, Villanova from doing the same. That inside-outside combo should be very scary come March.
Yeah, and Griggs, the USC went across country to win at Temple. Winning at Temple, they weren't impressive at it, but I was also very impressed with Oregon, the way they just crushed. What I thought was a decent SMU team.
I agree with that. And again, it wasn't as much, it certainly wasn't as important on paper as what UCLA did to Villanova, and wasn't as good of a game. But SMU, we kind of thought they were fringe bubble, maybe even inside the bubble, and Oregon just, blasted them.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the upcoming schedule here for this week. Titel, it's on the screen there. A lot of those games are listed as Monday night. They're going on right now as we record this. And we're seeing some more of these bottom teams, as we mentioned, Arizona State, Washington struggling as we record this at home, Cal struggling at home. It's not a good sign for the bottom of the conference, is it?
It's not, but if I can focus on the bottom of the page, I will be in Vegas on Friday for my Wildcats to take on Wichita. If we win, we'll probably face Michigan on Sunday because they play UNLV in the first round of the Roman main event. A tough task. Wichita State and Michigan both made the tournament last year. We did not, but can't wait to see the Cats in person for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and those, other than the Oregon BYU game we already mentioned, those might be some of the games really worth circling this week.
Yeah, Chad, another sneaky good game tonight. I think this, Wazoo, a potential dark horse, taking on a really good UC Santa Barbara team, or a team we think is going to be really good. And then again on Thursday, some brief trivia here, Chad. Wazoo taking on Idaho. And I just wanted to point out two things about this series and this rivalry. The two schools are, I believe, 7.6 miles apart.
8 miles.
When you MapQuest it. So that rounds up to 8, just 8 miles apart. And they've never met in the NCAA tournament, those two. I don't know. I can't think of any other rivalry or any other matchup that has that distinction.
There might be one other one, and maybe that's a good segue. I'm pretty certain that there may be a matchup here in the ACC. Maybe it's like Boston College and Penn State. I'm not that.
No, they're more than. I think they're like 10.
It's not Penn State's not even in the ACC, are they? But,
yeah.
But Joby, I got to do it. I got to ask you start by asking about your Who's and that game in red there on opening night, and what the heck happened losing at home to a Navy team that then got blown out at home by Vatek.
Yeah, well, Navy was literally, I felt like I was watching UMBC all over again, the way Navy was just nailing threes. But here's the issue. And it was exposed that night in what will be Virginia's Achilles heel going forward. Virginia needs to find outside shooting. Gardner produced. He had close to 20 points. He could score whenever he wanted to, for the most part. Jalen Gardner, the transfer from East Carolina. But as is the case for many Tony Bennett teams, when there is a starter turnover, and there are 3 new starters, 2 of them brand new to the program. In those particular cases, it takes that vaunted defense a little time to warm up. And then it turns pretty good, usually by the time ACC tournament play rolls around, or ACC conference play. Offensively, though, you're bailed out when you have Hauser, Huff, et cetera, nailing shots from the outside. Right now, there is no replacement for Hauser. There is no outside stretch 4, that can actually shoot from the outside. that lack of outside shooting allows teams to pack it in. And then, hey, if they're hot like Navy was, they've got a puncher's chance. And that should scare Virginia fans going forward, because this could be the first of a few stumbles that we see both out of conference, but more importantly, with those bottom dwellers that you're going to see. We'll get to Pitt. Yeah, but you could see losses to the Pitts of the world during the regular season, which could kill a March tournament run.
I'll tell you what, there are a couple of teams I do want to discuss. Not really Pitt. Yes, they lost at home to Citadel badly, but Titel, Florida State, after beating up on your Penn Quakers, actually surprised me that the way Florida beat them over the weekend.
They expended all their energy in taking us out by scoring 105 points, and then they had nothing left for the Gators. Almost the 11-month to the day anniversary of their game last year, when Keontae Johnson went down with a horrific-looking injury. They just got outplayed, frankly. Colin Castleton played like an All-American. 15 points, 16 rebounds, 6 blocks. He was just everything for the Gators. And the Noles are young. They had Matthew Cleveland and Jalen Worley, they're 2 hotshot freshmen coming off the bench. Those guys will eventually, I think, make it into the starting 5. But, yeah, way too much exposure against Penn.
Dorman, the team that is basically only 8 miles apart from Duke is North Carolina. I want to talk about both those teams, though, Duke and North Carolina. Let's start with North Carolina, though, who is off to a 2-0 start, rolled Loyola, but had a little bit of a struggle against Brown. So, is there any problems here, or is it just to try to get the system running under the new coach?
I think it's getting the system going under Hubert Davis now in charge there in Chapel Hill. But I will say that against Brown really controlled the game for almost to about the 3-minute mark. I mean, North Carolina was really in trouble there. Brown was playing well and rebounding with them and hitting their shots. And North Carolina looked frazzled and discombobulated and taking some bad shots and turning the ball over. Brown impressed me, but North Carolina, it's going to take a little while. Hubert Davis will put his system in, get his guys going. I don't think they're the top of this conference with Duke as of right now. That obviously can change, but I saw some issues there against Brown.
Yeah, and Griggs, we got to talk about Duke as well. Real impressive opening night against Kentucky. Yeah, real impressive against Coach K's alma mater there with Army West Point. Yeah, and then came the Campbell game on Saturday, which I did not think I'd be watching a minute of, and I watched a ton of.
Yeah, Campbell hung in there, relatively speaking. I mean, well into the second half. I mean, it was a game worth watching for about 25, 30 minutes before Duke kind of got control of it and opened it up. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that that's a reason for concern. I think that it was just sort of like an off day against a lower caliber team, and they still ended up winning without having to sweat too bad. But wow.
They were playing with their food. Let's be honest.
That's what they were doing.
I mean, and this is from what I've seen in the other 2 games, particularly the opening night, Duke's a Final Four caliber team, at least at this early stage. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Here is the upcoming schedule for this week. Joby, by the way, it's not quite on the screen yet, but Navy lost again to Louisville this time, a Louisville team that lost to Furman. So, Navy, you're not scoring points for the Navy loss, unfortunately. But there's the upcoming schedule. And I think, probably the game to circle here might be Saturday, that North Carolina Purdue game. Am I correct there? And then I guess we do on Sunday.
North Carolina,
also.
Purdue. We're going to find out a lot. Purdue's real. Purdue's ready to go. I would think Purdue has got their act together a little more because of Hubert Davis being new, because the roster's still trying to figure its way out. Purdue doesn't have those issues. I'd feel pretty strongly about backing the Boilers in that game. And that's not an indication that North Carolina is not as good as they were last year or whatever. I still think North Carolina can turn out to be a very solid team. It's just not ready yet. I think the issues we saw with Duke, and Campbell are different than the issues we saw with Brown in North Carolina. North Carolina at times seemed discombobulated against Brown, not disinterested.
That game, actually, the winner of that game gets the winner of a Villanova Tennessee game also. So it's going to be a real fun weekend in that event. And then we did mention earlier Notre Dame St. Mary's next Monday. That's the start of, I think that's the Maui tournament, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's roll on to the Big East, where, Griggs, we saw a pretty good game tonight before we came on the air. Big East now up 1-0 in the Gavitt games, with the second Gavitt game between Providence and Wisconsin at the half as we record this. But we did see Marquette find a way to beat a shorthanded Illinois team.
Well, yeah, and it is worth pointing out that Illinois was shorthanded, but still a monster win for Marquette. It was an early season showcase game on their home floor. Sometimes those can be really hard games to win because, it's just a lot of energy. They were jacked up for it. And what does this do, not just for Marquette's paper, but for their sort of mental health and the confidence going forward that, wow, what a win. I mean, they got to be feeling like they're 50 feet tall right now.
Yeah, I think they are. And actually, it's been a much better start to the season for the Big East. Maybe it's because of the opponents they played, but you look at the entire season's results are there on the right-hand side, Titel. Other than the Villanova lost to UCLA, the only other team that lost was Georgetown to Dartmouth.
Yes, it was fun to get back at Capital One Arena and then watch Georgetown choke. So Dartmouth got out to a huge early lead. They were up 22 points in the first half. And fortunately, the crowd stuck around because the Hoyas came all the way back and actually took the lead with about 11 minutes to go in the second half, which you assume, now that the Big East team is finally caught up to the Ivy League team, they're just going to keep on and finish it off. And they absolutely didn't. They fell apart. Dartmouth seniors, Brendan Barry and Taurus Samuels, each made 6 threes. Georgetown, the one shining light was freshman Aminu Muhammad, the Big East preseason Rookie of the Year pick. He looks like the real deal. He was their leading scorer with 17 points, also rebounds and passes a little bit. So I think his future is bright. But this team is missing 4 senior starters from last year, and it showed.
Yeah, Dorman, we didn't really get to see much about the Big East teams other than the Villanova UCLA game in week 1. That does change after tonight's games, but we've got all the Gavitt games coming up this week. Creighton, Nebraska, Seton Hall, Michigan coming up Tuesday night. Michigan State, Butler, St. John's, Indiana Wednesday night. Ohio State, Xavier, Rutgers, DePaul Thursday night. So is this a week we really start learning how good this Big East really is?
Absolutely. A lot of these opponents are now going to a lot of these Big East teams are going to start to play real teams. Like you just mentioned, that game tomorrow night, Seton Hall at Michigan. Seton Hall is good this year. Kevin Willard has a very good basketball team. They will give Michigan a run for their money. And if Michigan isn't playing well or isn't gotten their stuff together, Seton Hall could absolutely win that game tomorrow night. Creighton versus Brown. We saw Brown hang tough against North Carolina last week. We'll see if they can do it with Creighton. I know Creighton's young and not expected to be great this year, but that's an interesting game. And one more I'll point out, Ohio State at Xavier will be a dandy. I believe that is Thursday night. Yep. That will be tremendous. Xavier, I believe it's on Xavier's home floor, so the crowd should be going crazy. We'll see what Ohio State brings, as they have struggled basically out of the gate for the first 10 days of the season.
Yeah, and Marquette off of the win tonight. Titel, they got an event coming up starting Friday. Could have Ole Miss followed by West Virginia, followed by either Clemson or St. Bonaventure. It's going to be a three real days. We're going to find out how good this Marquette team really is, isn't it?
It is, and it doesn't get any easier in December when they get 3 in a row against Wisconsin and Kansas State on the road, and then they host the Bruins from UCLA. Very tough scheduling for Shaka, so his net ranking is going to be way up there, but I fear that his one-loss record might be a little down there.
Yeah.
To follow up on like what David said, Ohio State, Xavier, 2 teams that normally don't play despite being close in proximity and both, having some basketball pedigree. Chris Holtman, I just want to tip my hat to him because I don't think they'd played Cincinnati in like 150 years or something like that. He got them on the schedule. Granted, those games were terrible to watch, but at least they played them. Now scheduling Xavier, he's not afraid to play some of the in-state teams that a lot of previous coaches didn't want to play.
Joby, let's go over to the other half of the Gavitt games here, which is the Big Ten Conference. Now trailing 1-0, might be down 2-0 as Wisconsin is down at the half as we record this at home to Providence. But, other than what Nebraska did, I don't think it was that bad of a start for the Big Ten. UMass tonight beat Penn State. I just allowed to say that one. Yeah,
UMass is an awful team. But this conference is all. On the gridiron, this conference is the deepest right now. I think on the hard court, it's matching itself up. I mean, it just comes at you at waves. As we say, look down there. I'm biased. I look at the J&G numbers: 12, 27, 16, 32, 33, 5, 6, 29, 9, and in a given year, 49. Those are all at large worthy spots. And remember, the J&G is meant to say, are you at large worthy? It's all early. It's early, things change, but that shows you the starting point, so to speak, of where this conference is.
And you've got Michigan State 136, and I don't think that they're that bad. I think they're way better than that.
Because they have the law. I mean, people who lose early get that, Illinois will drop, obviously, after tonight. Yeah, that it doesn't take into account the loss to Marquette. But, we'll see, as we said, about Marquette later. This is a deep conference. It's tough to actually, it's so deep. It's tough. I'd go with Michigan right now as my favorite, but if you told me Purdue won it or Ohio State won it, Indiana's actually back this year, I think, to a degree. I mean, it's a really, really strong conference. Hats off. I'm actually shocked that they'll be down probably 2-0. I have a feeling at the end of the day, the majority of wins, though, they'll kick into gear in the Gavitt games at the end.
Okay. I would like to point something out, Joby. As of now, I see maybe 1 or 2 games that weren't home bye games, and even those were. Buffalo's a legit team and Michigan beat them, but is the Big Ten perhaps a little bit overvalued on some of these preseason predictive matrix that I guess they're pulling data from budgets and returning players and all of that? Because what's the best win of the conference so far? Is it Michigan over Buffalo?
David, Griggs, I got to take an issue here. We're only a week into the season.
We're only a week into the season, but what's the best win for the league? I mean, everybody else that we've talked about, the Big East, the West Coast, they've all had at least one team that won a big game.
Destroying Northern Illinois is a really that's why I mentioned Indiana. Northern Illinois is actually going to be at the top half of the MAC. I mean,
the top half of the
margin should make people wake up.
Villanova is going to be in the top 10. Like, I'm just asking, what's the best win so far?
I'd say a Minnesota over a Kansas City team that just went on the road and beat beat Missouri, and then Minnesota going ahead and winning a 4-team event, albeit only beating Princeton and Western Kentucky, but they won an event over the weekend. But or could it be Titel, Michigan's win on a neutral court over Prairie View that you were at?
Man, it was amazing to see so much maize and blue in the entertainment and sports arena on Saturday nights. So Michigan plays 3 neutral site games all year long. And by sheer coincidence, because I ain't a Michigan fan or anything, I'm going to be at all 3 in an 8-day span because I'm flying to Vegas to see my Cats on Friday, and Michigan's going to be there playing UNLV in the other side of the bracket, and then they'll play either Arizona or Wichita on Sunday. So Hunter Dickinson looked as good as advertised, and Juwan Howard can coach, and they're freshmen. They start Caleb Houston. He had 13, and they bring in Kobe Buffkin and Musa Diabate off the bench. They combine for 14 points and 12 rebounds. It's hard to get them playing time as freshmen because the rest of the team is so good. But Michigan looks like the real deal, and I think that if I had to pick a team to win the conference today, it would be the Wolverines.
Yeah, and Griggs, to answer your point, I think we get a lot more between the Gavitt games here that we're getting this week and that Michigan event that Titel is going to be at, and the Purdue event that we talked about already. By next Monday night, we'll know a lot more about the Big Ten.
Fair enough.
Okay. I don't know that you should call them out for bye games 1 week into the season. Call them out.
I'm not. That wasn't my point. I think everybody's gushing over the Big Ten, not just you guys, but in general. And I'm just sort of like, well, let's wait a minute. You know.
Dorman, let me go back to you as we jump over to the Big 12 conference. Should we be gushing over this league, which is coming up on the screen? There are only 2 losses so far. Oklahoma State's home loss to Oakland and the Gonzaga Texas game.
I don't think we should be gushing yet because, like you just said, they really haven't done much work here yet and haven't gotten going. More so, they will be tested, a lot of these teams, in the next couple of weeks or 2. But when I look on the right side on who we've beaten here, besides the Kansas win, I don't see much. But like to David's point in the Big Ten, the Big 12 will be tested coming up with these tournaments. We'll see where they really are.
Yeah, I think you're right. We just don't, other than knowing that Oklahoma State, who's ineligible anyhow, may not
Correct.
be that great. I don't think we know enough.
The team that jumps out to me, the win that jumps out to me from this, though, is Iowa State over Oregon State, because Iowa State is dirt bottom below. I mean, they are one of the 2 teams that you just kick dirt on in the Big 12, but yet they go out and they beat a team that, is coming off a very impressive tournament run from last year. And if out of the Pac-12, and they did it pretty solidly. That's the win that I go, the whole conference is kind of like what we were talking about with BYU. It's the sort of win that even if Iowa State is once again the doormat, well, that doormat actually has decent metrics, at the end of the day, which brings the whole conference up. And then we're back to the Big 12 talking about, 7 or 8 teams again.
Right. To your point, Joby, that first game that Iowa State played against Kennesaw State, which they won, but Kennesaw State is like god awful. If you're not familiar with the Under the Radar podcast, they typically are. And they only won by like 10, and it seemed to confirm everything we thought about Iowa State, that they were just pitiful and would not finish that high in the Atlantic Sun. But then they go and beat Oregon State. I kind of was impressed with that, or I don't know if impressed is the right word. I was surprised.
Yeah. Oregon State lost a lot of their key components and the coach's son that went on that magical run last March. So let's really see where Oregon State fits in this Pac-12 puzzle. I think it's toward the very bottom. So I'm not going to give so much credit to Iowa State on that win. I believe it was also at home. So let's see how that plays out. But Oregon State's lost a lot.
Another game, West Virginia only beating Pitt by 15. The backyard brawl rivalry. Is that reason for concern?
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll find. We look at the upcoming schedule here for the Big 12. We may not find out too much information even this coming week. There's a lot more bye games in here. West Virginia is one that we'll find out a little bit about with either Marquette or Ole Miss, followed by maybe the Bonnies or Boise or Clemson. Oklahoma, we may find a little bit about it in the championship game of their event, where they might be going up against a team like New Mexico State that we think is a pretty good team out of the WAC, though.
Let's see what Nicholls State does. I'm dead serious when I say that. That's if TCU walks in sleepwalking, they're going to walk out with an L.
Did Nicholls play Baylor tonight? Is that who they played?
And they got 29. Yes. I think Baylor's still dang good as the national team, and they lost. Yeah, they lost Butler and other players, but as we talked in preseason, they're still a top 10 team.
Yeah, I'm with you on Nicholls being the best team in the Southland.
Yeah.
Griggs, let me stay with you as we jump over to the SEC here. And I want to talk about a game that's not even going to show up on our scores because it actually went final after we started. But just tonight, just this evening, you can pick Missouri at 1-1 as they lose at home by a score of 80-66 to Kansas City Roos.
Well, I would like to give Missouri credit for for getting the margin down to 14 after being down by more than 20 late in the game. I mean, that is just shows like what kind of potential Mizzou's terrible. Oh my God, they got their doors blown off by Kansas City, who came in 0-2. I do think this Kansas City team, by under the radar standards, is improving as a program and could make some noise in the Southland or in the Summit, excuse me. But this is not under the radar. Missouri's just terrible. And they're not alone in this league.
Tytel, is there anyone good in this league then?
Yes, I believe in Tennessee. They are young with a starter in the hotshot freshman of Kennedy Chandler, who's been looking good so far, 6 of 7 from behind the arc. And I don't believe in Rick Barnes in March, but I do believe in him in November and December. And their schedule, a huge game against Villanova this coming Saturday in the great state of Connecticut at Mohegan Sun. That'll be a huge test, obviously, especially because Villanova is coming in off of a very tough game against UCLA. So I think that might be the game of the weekend.
And they've got that's the first game of that event that also involves Purdue and is it North Carolina, I believe?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's actually take a look at the upcoming schedule because there's another conference where we just saw tons of bye wins.
Real quick. I know that they were both bye games, but they were against upper echelon under the radar teams. I was really impressed with the Crimson Tide. Everybody, all of you have been big on Alabama. I thought they were really impressive in both those wins.
Yeah, they did blow out a Louisiana Tech team that we'd like to maybe win the Conference USA, and a South Dakota State team we think might win the Summit League.
I'm with David on that. No, I also throw Arkansas in the mix. Alabama and Arkansas are going to be dangerous out of this SEC.
Here's the upcoming schedule, and Dorman, let me ask you. I'm not necessarily what we're even circling this week. I mean, you look at there's two power conference teams at Georgia Tech and Georgia, but Georgia's going to be horrible. Other than the games we already discussed that's coming up this weekend in that event with Tennessee, Villanova, Purdue, and Carolina, we're still not going to know much this next week, are we?
They're not going to be. You're right. Those tournaments will show the most. But Ohio at Kentucky, Friday night in Rupp will be a very good game. Ohio is good. Ohio can play basketball, and they can run up and down the court with Kentucky. If Kentucky takes this game lightly, look out. Ohio is good.
All right.
I like Tennessee Nova is a big one.
Okay. Albany, Kentucky. Joby, anything else you're looking at in terms of this conference? I'll just give you 3 seconds on it.
I was about to say the Ohio, because they've already beaten Belmont, who is very good in my opinion, or their traditional solid, in Cleveland State who's solid. Those are the ones that you kind of look at as that could be interesting. Winthrop would be very interesting if they were actually playing a real SEC team.
It could be a good game, not worth watching, but it would be a good game.
But I agree 100% on the Ohio Kentucky. Watch it. The one to not watch, by the way, I'm calling it right now. Everybody who thinks Northern Iowa's good at all, they are not, and they will get rolled by the Razorbacks.
I agree with you there. UAB South Carolina could also be a good game because South Carolina is awful and UAB is actually a decent team. But
I think UAB dump trucks them.
Milwaukee at Florida, another. I think Florida showed us something this weekend beating Florida State, but Milwaukee with Pat Baldwin Jr., the coach's son, 5-star recruit. See how he does there as well. Let's jump over to the American Conference here, and Titel, let me go back to you, possibly if the scores come up on the screen here. Houston is 2-0, but they were not an easy 2-0.
Really sitting them down there.
Yes, I mean, beating Hofstra without Jalen Ray in overtime at home, very unimpressive. Destroying Rice by 33, impressive. Very tough schedule ahead. They host Virginia, and then they travel to Lahaina, Hawaii to play Butler and others for the holiday tournament out there. So I defer to Joby. I think that because Virginia will be focused after the loss to Navy, that I'm still picking Houston, but I think Virginia is going to be playing angry.
It's going to be up to that 3-point shooting, John. It's what I mentioned. Houston has the size and the defense to be able to contain Gardner. So Franklin better show up like he did against Radford, Murray, McCorkle. Someone needs to pop out for Virginia from the outside. If that doesn't happen, then I think Houston doesn't just win. I think they, make those who go with the favorite in the desert happy.
Dorman, Memphis has played 2 games. They played Tennessee Tech and North Carolina Central and won big. Are you Are you buying into Memphis yet, or are you still waiting?
I'm waiting. This team is young. I want to see them play someone. But they're top 3 or 4 in this conference, if not one. But they're young, and we'll see how it plays out, and how Penny Hardaway can see if we can get them going. But I was disappointed. We pointed out earlier in SMU. I really thought that they had a chance to show something against Oregon, and they were flat from the start, never really in the game. But if you look at some of these other games, I mean, this conference has beaten Miami. They've beaten Georgia. This is going to help the conference's rankings.
That'll help. I think that the fact that South Florida let Bethune-Cookman stay around in the game for about 3/4 of the game, then lost at home to Georgia Southern, then needed a miracle to beat North Carolina A&T tonight. Those teams are not going to help this conference.
Right. I do think that there's some dead weight in this league, but I'm glad David brought up UCF. I kind of wanted to get everyone's opinion on them. I know Miami isn't inside a lot of people's bubbles right now, but I don't think they're exactly anybody thinks they're crap either. 2-0, going there and getting the win, kind of getting it decisively. Does UCF have something this year?
Miami is crap.
Okay.
There's your answer.
Cincinnati and Georgia, I think that would have been a better game had they been playing football.
We are going to find out. We have some pretty good games, actually, believe it or not, coming out with this league beginning tomorrow night with that Virginia-Houston game we already discussed. Also, St. Louis at Memphis. We get our first real good test for Memphis. I'm just looking to try to find we've got Wichita State, Arizona coming up this weekend. I think we mentioned that earlier, but I'm trying to even find Central Florida on here. They're playing Jacksonville, it looks like.
Yeah, in-state war.
And they're at Evansville, so we're not going to learn much about Central Florida, I don't think, this week unless they lose.
Yeah.
SMU better take care of business and knock Missouri, or that'll look real bad.
Dorman, I know you wanted to talk a little A-10, so let's bring the Atlantic 10 up here, and I'll just give you the floor here with whatever you want to discuss on this fairly disappointing conference so far.
I hate knocking them because I love Atlantic 10 basketball. I love their tournament every March, and I like a lot of the coaches in this conference, and usually you get 5-6 solid teams. But over the weekend, I saw Duquesne lose at home to Hofstra out of the Colonial. VCU lost at home to Wagner out of the Northeast. Dayton lost at home to UMass Lowell out of the American East. UMass lost on the road to Yale from the Ivy. Davidson lost in San Francisco. George Washington lost in San Diego. Fordham lost in Manhattan. And Richmond, who I thought was going to be good this year, they have all this experience. I love the coach. And they go, it's not a terrible loss to Utah State, but Utah State is good, but Richmond on their home court should have had this.
Right.
I believe it was a neutral. I'm sorry. They should have still had that win.
Just real quick on Fordham, they lost to Manhattan. They lost in the Bronx. Manhattan located in the Bronx, despite being called Manhattan. Fordham also located in the Bronx. Fordham often loses in the Bronx, or wherever it is they happen to be playing.
Hey, Fordham picked up a huge win over St. Thomas tonight. You know, a brand new transitional team
by 6.
By six.
Oh my God!
I tell you, you saw a very rare A-10 win. It sounds like, and it's a game you did not want to see the A-10 win in.
You are correct. I haven't seen my Quakers in 18 months because they haven't played in 18 months. So it was great just to see them on the court, frankly. And it was closer than Florida State, thank God. But yeah, the Patriots really put it to us. And the big man Josh Oduro, he dominated inside against us. He made 9 of 11 inside the arc. And then he goes back 2 days later against Morgan State and is 3 of 3 from behind the arc. The guy, you can't stop him. They start 3 juniors and 2 seniors. I'm not sold necessarily on Kim English because you know how I love first-year coaches, which is not that much, but they look great so far. Huge test on Wednesday at the Terps. We'll see if they're for real, which I don't think they are, but you're 3-0, and when you're playing bad teams and beating them by 20 or more, that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, the Terps played around with George Washington all day.
Oh, yeah.
Maryland is lucky to actually get out alive with that one. And George Washington, that spot on our screen where they're 14th in the A-10, they may hold that all year. Well, that's right. Fordham's in this league. So maybe not.
No one's worse than Fordham.
but they're going to have a double-digit They're going to finish in the double digits in this league. That's a sign. I don't think that's more of, I think, a Maryland issue. Maybe the whole, as I said before, playing with their food, like Duke earlier. But, we'll see. Maybe that's David's sign that the Big Ten heavyweights do have issues.
Griggs, okay, so Dorman, you first, then I got a question for Griggs.
Just because I knocked the entire conference, I do believe St. Bonaventure is very good, is for real this year, and is a legit Sweet 16 team this year. St. Bonaventure is good.
St. Bonaventure is really good, but Griggs, I wanted to ask you about the other Saint. How about St. Louis, who I was very impressed with the way they rolled Siena. They played a non-D1 school. They also beat up on Eastern Illinois, but they beat these teams huge. We all wrote them off when Perkins went down for the season.
That's just it. Yeah, you are impressed to see like how good they look, even though they're beating up on cream puffs. I mean, they're at least beating them the way that a tournament caliber team should beat them. So they kind of have my attention again. It stinks that they're without such a key player this season, but they really might have something. We kind of touched on St. Bonaventure, not to hijack your question, but to hijack your question. They won both the games. I agree with David. I've been big on the Bonnies all year, but they had to sweat against two pretty bad teams like Canisius and Siena.
Well, they didn't sweat Siena, did they? I mean, but Canisius did. Canisius, they were in trouble.
So, and this is the Big Four. It's them, Canisius, Buffalo, and I think. And
it is a rivalry game, so it's Canisius, Niagara, Buffalo, and the Bonnies.
Yeah.
Syracuse is not part of the Big Four because nobody likes Syracuse.
Yeah.
There's the upcoming schedule for the A10 on the screen. There are a bunch of games there. We already mentioned the St. Louis Memphis game. I think there's definitely some challenges here for the conference. Winnable games, but challenge games. Really looking to see what the Bonnies do in their event this weekend, though.
That is a big deal, and maybe sometimes it just takes you a second to get awake. And that could be kind of what they're going through. But God, the potential for them is huge.
Right. We got one more league to hit. Titel, let me go back to you and figure out what conference we've in. Mountain West. That's what we skipped. Is there? Are they even a multi-bid league anymore for what you've seen so far this season?
Not yet. I'm still impressed. Rocco is all over Colorado State in our preseason show, and they've been winning handily. Granted, they beat Oral Roberts and scored 109 points in doing so, which is good when you're playing against the nation's leading scorer in Max Asmus. Then they had a couple of cupcakes, and they still have a couple of cupcakes to go before hosting St. Mary's to start December. The rest of the conference, too early to tell. I'll be seeing UNLV in Vegas, although it's a semi-home game because they're at the T-Mobile Arena. If they can beat Michigan and then Arizona, Wichita State, then I'm all on the Rebels bandwagon, but it's not going to happen.
Just a quick note, as we record this, UNLV, as they're approaching halftime, only up 3 on North Dakota State. So they may even have a loss tomorrow morning. All right.
Chad, real quick, I'm going to ask you to do something that you haven't done yet that you absolutely have the power to do. Can we pull up Colorado State's profile here?
Absolutely. Let's go to some profiles. We'll ignore Mississippi Valley State and St. Thomas. you can take a look at what I was looking at before we started the show. Some powerful schools. But if you look on the left there, we're going to be pulling up a profile. For those again new to this show, this is you're seeing your wins in the left column, your losses in the center column, and your remaining schedule there on the right. But there it is.
Okay, I would like to draw. I really like this Colorado State team, and I know that these are bye games against under the radar teams. Oral Roberts actually pretty good. They were in the Sweet 16 last year, and they returned not all of their talent, but most of it. And Colorado State, blasted their doors off. But what I would like to point out is their schedule. With the exception of the neutral floor game against Mississippi State, this could be a team that racks up a huge bloated record. Every year, there's typically a team out of the Mountain West, the American, or the Atlantic 10 that is better than everybody else, and they just keep moving up and up and up in the rankings until they're ranked in the low teens or single digits by the end of the year. Colorado State not in the rankings now. Do they get into the top 10 almost by default by the end of the year, along with the Bonnies?
Well,
this is a good team.
You look at it, you got 2 San Diego State games there in conference, but non-conference, There's a St. Mary's game at home. There's a Mississippi State game. Their event that they got this weekend, they start with Bradley, then they get either Brown or Creighton. And the championship game, the best team in there is Colorado. I don't know that that gets you where you need to be. You could be a top 10 team with an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament.
You can be, and I am not a proponent of this, of this, but it seems like it happens every year, and you're going to get a team that gets super highly ranked and that everyone's going crazy over, and then they get an 8 seed or a 7 seed, and everybody's like, well, what the hell? How are they not seeded better? This is why, but I think Colorado State is easily inside the bubble. They're in on the first ballot, most likely. And I think they're going to be a team that almost becomes a little bit, they're going to be one of those teams that might become a national darling because of how high they get in the rankings, because they're just going to move up as the Power 5 teams beat up on each other.
Well, but it doesn't help. Joby, it doesn't help a team like Colorado State that you're already seeing losses at the bottom of this conference that we shouldn't be seeing. Like
the
Boise
other
State.
side of that BYU San Diego State game.
Yeah.
We're seeing the other side of that coin, which is, I do think San Diego State's still going to put up a pretty good record, and we'll see how San Diego State goes. I'd still trust their ability to have a strong year. But, if San Diego State had beaten BYU, we're talking very differently, I think, about the conference as a whole.
But, Joby, I'm also talking Utah State losing at home to UC Davis, Boise State losing to UC Irvine.
But they beat Richmond.
But they lost to. But there's some bad losses here already. Only a week into the season.
Yeah, but Chad, you're right. I agree with you.
UC Irvine's that bad.
What I am saying is that they're going to be high in the rankings, and I know that that's not the same as being high on the seed list. But I think Colorado State at the end of the year is going to be very highly ranked.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair enough.
To David's point. Colorado State can't really afford to lose many games here because that schedule is so weak. You lose to San Diego State and you lose a few more in the conference and you did nothing out of conference. You could be really on the bubble quickly.
You could be. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
One other game, I got the upcoming schedule, Title. One other game coming up this week that I think we should circle that we haven't mentioned yet. Arizona State's at San Diego State. I know you want to talk a little more Arizona State, so I'll give you a few seconds.
I must. I'm actually looking forward to seeing San Diego State on Thanksgiving when I head to the Wooden Legacy. But yes, this is, as you can see by the number 6 in their adjusted defense column, this team wins with defense. They held BYU, I think it was like 66-60. So they were in it, just couldn't get over the hump with the offense. They lost so much from last year in Mitchell and Shackle that it's just taken them time to get the offense rolling. ASU lost Remy Martin to Kansas and lost other players elsewhere. So Hurley's kind of got a rebuild going as well. Been very impressed by Kamani Lawrence. I think he had a double-double last week. And I'm glad I got the chance to interview him. He's a nice kid.
Okay, fair enough. I'll tell you what, on that note, by my count, I think we covered all 10 conferences. So let's go ahead and pull this down here. Possibly, there it goes. And I want to run through each of you for any other final thoughts you have on anything that you would like to discuss. Joby, let me start with you.
Yeah, well, I think, Chad, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, the first official, not preseason bias, but the actual J&G is out. And, the top 4 teams, if you're a Final Four, are no shock because of the 4 teams with some really solid wins in Kansas, Duke, Gonzaga, and UCLA. And if you have a loss, a Michigan State, a Michigan State, a UVA, et cetera, you're out early because, you're 1-1 and 500 teams don't make it, Villanova. But who from the under the radar conferences has done a little early pop? 2 teams to watch with some nice early wins. I mentioned and talked about Ohio. Let's see what they do against Kentucky this week. Ohio, the J&G already has them at 20. Imagine if they beat Kentucky this week. And then the other one is Furman, who had the nice win over. We didn't speak about it in the ACC update, but they beat Louisville. And
but they did fall to Belmont tonight, though.
And they fell to Belmont tonight.
Okay.
Well, Furman's probably out.
In a game they had control of with 8 seconds to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is very interesting. What I found, usually at this time, you see more under the radar teams already popping. Well, the fact that Furman may have blown that element and leaving us only, and I don't include the Bonnies or Loyola Chicago in this group, it might be once again a very power conference heavy slate that makes the at-larges. We might not see too many of those under the radar conference leaders that earn an at-large, sort of the Buffalo from a few years ago, the Woffords from a year ago. We might Middle Tennessee State, we may not see that type of team really pop up, but maybe Ohio will give us hope this weekend.
I was very disappointed. I was sure you were going to mention the undefeated Chicago State Cougars on that list, but you missed them. Dorman, how about you? Any other final thoughts?
Starting this weekend is one of my favorite times on the calendar. We get all these exempt holiday tournaments. We see matchups that we don't get to see the rest of the year. We got big conferences versus the under the radar teams. In the championships, we might see two big power teams. And I just think it's awesome basketball. It's a great way to start the season. There's some great matchups coming. Maui's going to be loaded, and just one of the best times in the college basketball season. I can't wait. There's great games starting this weekend for all the way through Thanksgiving weekend. It's going to be fantastic basketball.
It is going to be. It's always a fun week.
Yeah,
Titel.
Just, I'm so happy to be getting to go to a game again. I mean, last year, I think it was the first year in the last several decades, frankly, that I didn't make it to a college basketball game because fans were not going to college basketball games. And it was sad, frankly. And it's nice to watch it on TV, but there's just something different about being in the arena with a comeback or a run or a great play and having everybody get into it. And it was just the other thing that I like is that it felt normal, with the only difference being the people were wearing masks. It's not like everybody had to stay like 10 feet apart and you had to like deal with like getting a shot before you walked in or anything. Like, it was a normal game experience with a mask. And so I felt safe. I hope other people feel safe going to games because it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yep, I'm going to be starting to go to games very soon here too. Absolutely, I'm ready. I've missed the sport a lot.
I got to find an arena that'll let me in.
Yeah. How do you get a mask on that puppet? I don't really know. You ought to finish the show off.
Anyway, I was going to say this for under the radar, but you did say Chicago State is 2-0, and they've actually beaten two D1 teams. It's kind of nice to see them win as many games before the end of November as they sometimes win all season long. Other than that, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I don't know if I think the Big Ten is loaded, and they're certainly going to send a lot of teams to the NCAA tournament. But I kind of alluded to this on the Big Ten preseason show. I don't know how many teams are going to get in. I don't know if the committee's going to take the 7th or 8th place team from the Big Ten over somebody from under the radar or from a team like Ohio or something like that. And let's see how they do once they start playing tougher schedule. And by the way, Providence is beating Whiskey right now.
Yes, Providence is beating Wisconsin. Tulsa's beating Oregon State. I don't know. We don't really need to go to any other scores here, but yeah. I do want to take a chance, though, to thank everybody for joining us. We will be back on Wednesday evening. We'll be recording an Under the Radar podcast. Next Monday, another Hoops HD report, and pretty much the same schedule for quite a while. But on behalf of John Titel and David Griggs up here, David Dorman and Joby Fortson below me, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.